Hello good listeners, welcome to Literate. In this video, we will be continuing our very first chapter of the book Why I Am an Atheist by Bhagat Singh. This is the second part of the first chapter. Please subscribe to the channel for free audiobooks, hit like button and do leave your feedbacks in comment section. During the reading, I found some hard words of English vocabulary, so I have provided meaning of those in video for your seamless experience. I suggest you to use headphone for better experience. Because our forefathers had set up a faith in some supreme, being the Almighty God, therefore any man who dares to challenge the validity of that faith or the very existence of that supreme being, he shall have to be called an apostate or renegade. If his arguments are too sound to be refuted by counter-arguments and spirit too strong to be cowed down by the threat of misfortunes that may befall him by the wrath of the Almighty, he shall be declared as vainglorious, his spirit to be denominated as vanity. Then why to waste time in this vain discussion? Why try to argue out the whole thing? This question is coming before the public for the first time and is being handled in this matter-of-fact way for the first time. Hence this lengthy discussion. As for the first question, I think I have cleared that it is not vanity that has led me to atheism. My way of argument has proved to be convincing or not, that is to be judged by the readers, not me. I know in the present circumstances my faith in God would have made my life easier, my burden lighter, and my disbelief in Him had turned all the circumstances too dry, and the situation may assume too harsh a shape. A little bit of mysticism can make it poetical, but I do not want the help of any intoxication to meet my fate. I am a realist. I have been trying to overpower the instinct in me by the help of reason. I have not always been successful in achieving this end, but man's duty is to try and endeavor. Success depends upon chance and environments. As for the second question, that if it was not vanity, then there ought to be some reason to disbelieve the old and still prevailing faith of the existence of God. Yes, I come to that now. Reason there is, according to me, any man who has got some reasoning power at his command always try to reason out his environments. Where direct proofs are lacking, philosophy occupies the important place. As I have already stated, a certain revolutionary friend used to say that philosophy is the outcome of human weakness. When our ancestors had leisure enough to try to solve out the mystery of this world, its past, present and the future, its whys and wherefores, they having been terribly short of direct proofs, everybody tried to solve the problem in his own way. Hence we find the wide differences in the fundamentals of various religious creeds, which sometimes assume very antagonistic and conflicting shapes. Not only the Oriental and Occidental philosophies differs, there are differences even amongst various schools of thoughts in each hemisphere. Amongst Oriental religions, the Muslim faith is not at all compatible with Hindu faith. In India alone, Buddhism and Jainism are sometimes quite separate from Brahmanism, in which there are again conflicting faiths as Arya Samaj and Sanatan Dharma. Charvak is still another independent thinker of past ages. He challenged the authority of God in the old times. All these creeds differ from each other on the fundamental question, and everybody considers himself to be on the right. There lies the misfortune. Instead of using the experiments and expressions of the ancient savants and thinkers as a basis of our future struggle against ignorance, and to try to find out a solution to this mysterious problem, we lethargically, as we have proved to be, raise the hue and cry of faith, unflinching and unwavering faith to their versions, and thus are guilty of stagnation in human progress. Any man who stands for progress has to criticize, disbelieve, and challenge every item of the old faith. Item by item, he has to reason out every nook and corner of the prevailing faith. If after considerable reasoning, one is led to believe any theory or philosophy, his faith is welcomed. His reasoning can be mistaken, wrong, mislead, and sometimes fallacious. But he is liable to correction because reason is the guiding star of his life. But mere faith and blind faith is dangerous. It dulls the brain and makes a man reactionary. A man who claims to be a realist has to challenge the whole of the ancient faith. If it does not stand the onslaught of reason, it crumbles down. Then the first thing for him is to shatter the whole down and clear a space for the erection of a new philosophy. This is the negative side. After it begins the positive work, in which sometimes some material of the old faith may be used for the purpose of reconstruction. As far as I am concerned, let me admit at the very outset that I have not been able to study much of this point. I had a great desire to study the Oriental philosophy, but I could not get any chance or opportunity to do the same. But so far as the negative study is under discussion, I think I am convinced to the extent of questioning the soundness of old faith. I have been convinced as to the non-existence of a conscious supreme being who is guiding and directing the movements of nature. We believe in nature, and the whole progressive movement aims at the domination of man over nature for his service. There is no conscious power behind it to direct. This is what our philosophy is. As for the negative side, we ask a few questions from the believers. If, as you believe, there is an almighty, omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent God who created the earth or world, please let me know why did he create it. This world of woes and miseries, a veritable, eternal combination of numberless tragedies, not a single soul being perfectly satisfied. Pray, don't say that it is his law. If he is bound by any law, he is not omnipotent. He is another slave like ourselves. Please don't say that it is his enjoyment. Nero burnt one Rome. He killed a very limited number of people. He created very few tragedies, all to his perfect enjoyment. And what is his place in history? By what names do the historians mention him? All the venomous epithets are showered upon him. Pages are blackened with invective diatribes condemning Nero, the tyrant, the heartless, the wicked. One Genghis Khan sacrificed a few thousand lives to seek pleasure in it, and we hate the very name. Then how are you going to justify your almighty, eternal Nero, who has been and is still causing numberless tragedies every day, every hour, every minute? How do you think to support his misdoing, which surpass those of Genghis every single moment? I say, why did he create this world? A veritable hell, a place of constant and bitter unrest. Why did the Almighty create man when he had the power not to do it? What is the justification for all this? Do you say to award the innocent sufferer hereafter and to punish the wrongdoers as well? Well, how far shall you justify a man who may dare to inflict wounds upon your body to apply a very soft and soothing liniment upon it afterwards? How far the supporters and organizers of gladiator institution were justified in throwing men before the half-starved furious lions to be cared for and well looked after they would survive and manage to escape death by the wild beast. That is why I ask, why did the conscious supreme being create this world and man in it? To seek pleasure? Where then is the difference between him and Nero? You Mohammedans and Christian Hindu philosophy shall still linger on to offer another argument. I ask you, what is your answer to the above mentioned question? You don't believe in previous birth, like Hindus. You cannot advance the argument of previous misdoings of the apparently quite innocent sufferers. I ask you, why did the omnipotent labor for 6 days to create the world through word, and each day to say that all was well? Call him today. Show him the past history. Make him study the present situation. Let us see if he dares to say all is well. From the dungeons of prison, from the stores of starvation consuming millions upon millions of human beings in slums and huts, from the exploited laborers, patiently or say apathetically watching the procedure of their blood being sucked by the capitalist vampires, and the wastage of human energy that will make a man with the least common sense shiver with horror, and from the preference of throwing the surplus of production in oceans rather than to distribute amongst the needy producers, to the palaces of king built upon foundation laid with human bones. Let him see all this and let him say all is well. Why and wherefore? That is my question. You are silent. Alright then, I proceed. Well, you Hindus, you say all the present sufferers belong to the class of sinners of the previous birth. Good. You say the present oppressors were saintly people in their previous births, hence they enjoy power. Let me admit that your ancestors were very shrewd people. They tried to find out theories strong enough to hammer down all the efforts of reason and disbelief. But let us analyze how far this argument can really stand. From the point of view of most famous jurists, punishment can be justified only from 3 or 4 ends to meet which it is inflicted upon the wrongdoer. They are retributive, reformative, and deterrent. The retributive theory is now being condemned by all the advanced thinkers. Deterrent theory is also following the same foot. Reformative theory is the only one which is essential and indispensable for human progress. It aims at returning the offender as a most competent and a peace-loving citizen to the society. But what is the nature of punishment inflicted by God upon men, even if we suppose them to be offenders? You say he sent them to be born as a cow, a cat, a tree, a herb, or a beast. You enumerate these punishments to be 84 levels. I ask you, what is its reformative effect upon men? How many men have met you who say that they were born as a donkey in previous birth or having committed any sins? None. Don't quote your Purans. I have no scope to touch your mythologies. Moreover, do you know that the greatest sin in this world is to be poor? Poverty is a sin. It is a punishment. Ask you, how far would you appreciate a criminologist, a jurist, or a legislator who proposes such measures of punishment which shall inevitably force men to commit more offences? Had not your God thought of this, or he also has to learn these things by experience, but at the cost of untold suffering, or to be borne by humanity? What do you think shall be the fate of a man who has been born in a poor or illiterate family of, say, a chamar or a sweeper? He is poor, hence he cannot study. He is hated and shunned by his fellow human beings who think themselves to be his superior, having been born in higher caste. His ignorance, his poverty, and the treatment meted out to him shall harden his heart towards society. Suppose he commits a sin, who shall bear the consequences? God, he, or the learned ones of the society? What about the punishment of those people who were deliberately kept ignorant by the haughty and egoist Brahmins, and who had to pay the penalty by bearing the stream of being led in their ears for having heard a few sentences of your sacred book of learning, the Vedas? If they committed any offense, who was to be responsible for them and who was to bear the burden? My dear friends, these theories are the inventions of the privileged ones. They justify their usurped power, riches, and superiority by the help of these theories. Yes, it was perhaps Upton Sinclair that wrote at some place that just make a man a believer in immortality and then rob him for all his riches and possessions. He shall help you even in that ungrudgingly. The collision amongst the religious preachers and possessors of power brought forth jails, gallows, knouts, and these theories. I ask why your omnipotent God does not stop every man when he is committing any sin or offense. He can do it quite easily. Why did he not kill warlords or kill the fury of war in them and thus avoid the catastrophe hurled down on the head of humanity by the Great War? Why does he not just produce a certain sentiment in the mind of the British people to liberate India? Why does he not infuse altruistic enthusiasm in the heart of all capitalists to forego their right of personal possession of means of production and thus redeem the whole laboring community, nay, the whole human society, from the bondage of capitalism? You want to reason out the practicability of socialist theory. I leave it for your Almighty to enforce it. People recognize the merits of socialism in as much as the general welfare is concerned. They oppose it under the pretext of its being impracticable. Let the Almighty step in and arrange everything in an orderly fashion. Now don't try to advance roundabout arguments. They are out of order. Let me tell you, British rule is here not because God wills it, but because they possess His power and we do not dare to oppose them. Note that it is with the help of God that they are keeping us under their subjection, but it is with the help of guns and rifles, bomb and bullets, police and militia, and apathy that they are successfully committing the most deplorable sin against society, the outrageous exploitation of one nation by another. Where is God? What is he doing? Is he enjoying all these woes of human race? A Nero, a Genghis, down with him. Do you ask me how I explain the origin of this word and origin of man? Alright, I will tell you. Charles Darwin has tried to throw some light on the subject. Study him. Read Sohan Swami's Common Sense. It shall answer your question to some extent. This is a phenomenon of nature. The accidental mixture of different substances in the shape of nebula produced this earth. When consult history. The same process produced animals and in the long run men. Read Darwin's Origin of Species. And all the later progress is due to man's constant conflict with nature and his efforts to override it. This is the briefest possible explanation of this phenomenon. Your other argument may be just to ask why a child is born blind or lame, if not due to his deeds committed in his previous birth. This problem has been explained away by biologists as a more biological phenomenon. According to them, the whole burden rests upon the shoulders of the parents, who may be conscious or ignorant of their own deeds that led to mutilation of the child previous to its birth. Naturally, you may ask another question, though it is quite childish in my essence. If no God existed, how did people come to believe in him? My answer is clear and brief. As they come to believe in ghosts and evil spirits, the only difference is that belief in God is almost universal and the philosophy well developed. Unlike certain of the radicals, I would not attribute this origin to the ingenuity of the exploiters who wanted to keep the people under their subjection by preaching the existence of a supreme being and then claiming an authority and sanction from him for their privileged positions. Though I do not differ with them on the essential point that all the faiths, religions, creeds, and such other institutions become in turn the mere supporters of the tyrannical and exploiting institution, men and classes. Rebellion against king is always a sin according to every religion. As regards the origin of God, my own idea is that having realized the limitation of man, his weakness and shortcoming having been taken into consideration, God was brought into imaginary existence to encourage the man to face boldly all the trying circumstances, to meet all dangers manfully, and to check and restrain his outburst in prosperity and affluence. God, both with his private laws and parental generosity, was imagined and painted in greater details. He was to serve as a deterrent factor when his fury and private laws were discussed so that man may not become a danger to society. He was to serve as a father, mother, sister, brother, friend, and helpers when his parental qualifications were to be explained, so that when men be in great distress, having been betrayed and distressed by old friends, he may find consolation in the idea that a ever true friend was still there to help him, to support him, and that he was almighty and could do anything. Really, that was useful to society in the primitive age. The idea of God is helpful to a man in distress. Society has to fight out this belief as well as idol worship and the narrow conception of religion. Similarly, when man tries to stand on his own legs, he becomes a realist. He shall have to throw the faith aside and to face manfully all the distress, trouble in which the circumstances may throw him. This is exactly my state of affairs. It is not my vanity and my friends, it is my mode of thinking that has made me an atheist. I don't know whether in my case belief in God and offering of daily prayers, which I consider to be most selfish and degraded act on the part of men, can prove to be helpful, or they shall make my case worse still. I have read of atheists facing all the troubles quite boldly, so I am trying to stand like a man with an erect head to the last, even on the gallows. Let us see how I carry on. One friend asked me to pray. When informed of my atheism, he said, "During your last days, you will begin to believe." I said, "No, dear sir, it shall not be. I will not think that to be an act of degradation and demoralization on my part. For selfish motives, I am not going to pray." Readers and friends, is this vanity? If it is, I stand for it. This is the very first chapter of book Why I Am an Atheist by Bhagat Singh. We will continue the second chapter, I Would Not Defend Myself, of the same book. Thank you. Keep watching The Literate.